Richards. I am with the Rethink team, and we've been working with you all on our diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging audit over the past couple months. You likely have a report in your inbox, and I wanted to create this short video just to kind of walk you through some key elements to the report and try to elevate some of the bigger ideas that I know help you all as you think about the decisions and things that you want to do as you move forward. So what I'm going to do throughout this video is I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to go to specific pages on the report and highlight a couple things, and then I'll ask you to pause the video and think about a couple of questions. Really what I want to help you all do is think about what are the connections between elements of the report and things that we learned throughout our work with you and your own perspective and experience as staff at Activate. So like I said, I will share my screen, point to a few elements throughout the next few minutes, and then I'll invite you to pause the video just to kind of think and reflect and make your own connections to what's in the report. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen and go to the first page and scroll down to the executive summary. And the executive summary will do a good job of just situating how we approached our work throughout this audit. And one of the resources we built for you all is an equity framework. And here you can see how we compiled that. What are the sources we used to compile the equity framework? But what this does in a nutshell is help you understand kind of the phases an organization goes through or could be in as they work towards building muscle and capacity around equity-minded work. So I'm going to scroll down to page 22, which is where Appendix A is. It's on page 22 and 23. And what you'll see with the equity framework are these stages of an organization. And so at the far left, absent being that there's, for example, no stated commitment to equity, diversity, inclusion, or any aspect of that is just completely absent. And you could read through that column and see other descriptors for what is seen as an organization where DEIB is absent. If you go all the way to the right, you would see that there's a description that is beyond just having a written statement, but where equity work is more integrated or embedded. And one of the kind of key ideas of moving kind of from the left to the right is a focus or beginning with a focus on like representation or traditional DEIB metrics, more towards building capacity within the organization to really deal with equity issues in more structural or systemic ways. So what I'm going to invite you to do here in a moment is just read through, pick a column or read all of them, or pick a column or two and identify where would you place Activate along the spectrum. The way you could do that is if you started, in the middle, emerging, and you went down, and you might find one or two that you're like, I think I see this at Activate, but a couple of others that you don't see at Activate, then you would go down a level. So go from 2 or 3 to 2. And as you read through 2, you might say, I see some of these, most of them. And if you said, I don't see any of them, you'd go down a level. Or in contrast, if you read through a column and you saw evidence of all of them, kind of move up and see, is there evidence from, transitional or from sustaining? So just take, I know that there's more content here to kind of internalize, but maybe take 3 to 5 minutes on your own, pause the video, and just identify where would you place Activate. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to go on, I'll close my screen. And then when I come back on, you'll know we'll move on to the next section. All right, so hopefully you've taken a few moments to read through the equity framework. The next place I want to show you are the summary recommendations. And I imagine some of you are drawn to go straight here because this just cuts to the heart of what are the results of this audit. And so I thought this would be a good place to go and just kind of explain how we pull all these recommendations together in kind of cohesive way. So you'll see here that we thought about the recommendations we made across these 4 areas. One being what we just called strategy and planning. And this was really kind of the idea of developing an arc for the fellow experience and for the curriculum that really centers equity, so that there's a clear point of view around what do we mean at Activate when we talk about being equity minded or embedding equity in our work. Um, Once you kind of have that vision, the next phase of this or another piece of this work is really what does that mean for the learning we do throughout time at Activate, both for staff and for fellows. And so that's really drawing in some of the recommendations from the curriculum review that we did. Another component is just organizational capacity. If you have kind of centered, what does equity mean for us at Activate? How does that kind of embed and is integrated within our professional learning? This one is really, these recommendations are really around what are the capacity that we need as an organization to do this. And then the last is just ongoing assessment and evaluation. We just feel that there always has to be a component to equity work that we have the mechanism or the way to consistently learn about equity experiences, the lived experiences of staff and fellows in our organizations. So, there's any number of places you could start if you were to break off pieces of work and say, this is where we want to get started. But I think it's important as we think about an organization that's moving from one place on the framework to another, that it's really about building capacity to do this work over time. And to get to kind of I think sometimes people ask, what is the end state? I don't know that we don't know there's a perfect end state, but we call it sustaining. So that an organization that's doing this work over time is building practices, policies, and the systems that allow this work to sustain over time. So we see these recommendations as helping Activate ultimately get to that place. So what I'm going to invite you to do again is just to take a few moments, however long you need to, and think about what connections do you see between these set of recommendations as they sit now and the framework that you saw. I think what we want to draw your attention to is how would these recommendations help you at Activate move from the place where you are, how you thought about where Activate is, to a future state that is emerging or transitional or sustaining. So go ahead and take a few minutes, and then I'll be back to bring us to another part of the report. All right, so hopefully you had a few moments to read over the summary recommendation. So I think now a question could be, where did all of this come from? Where did all these ideas come from? So like I said, you'll look at the table of contents. We've broken this up section by section, and we looked at the curriculum. We looked at different components of the mentoring program. We talked to fellows. This page here, page 5, gives you kind of that overview of what work did we do with Activate over the past couple of months. And so here in the middle of the page, right under those bullet points, talks about, we collected materials through an intake process related to, DEIB efforts, strategic plans. We looked through curriculum. And then we also had, interviews and focus groups. And what I draw your attention to, our focus throughout this was, one, to start with, what do we know about Activate's current mission and its commitment to DEI now? So that is at kind of the forefront of how we thought about this audit. And then the focus was, assessing the extent to which DEIB was evident throughout the mentoring program and the curriculum over the 2 years. And so this just gives you a sense for where we started, what was involved and part of this process. And I think what I'll do is I'm going to jump ahead to one component to this audit that was the focus groups and interviews. And so starting on page 7, you'll see 2 areas. One were our accelerators for equity mindedness, and the second area are opportunities. And so I'm going to kind of bring you into what did we hear from fellows directly. And again, there's just one component to this audit, but I think it's where we started. And we noticed that there were a number of themes that fellows talked about. that we saw as really accelerators for doing this work. One of those was the value building community. That fellows really expressed, appreciation for the way that community is built amongst their colleagues. And so I think that's a place to be, proud of for you all as an accomplishment. The other thing fellows talked about is just the connections they have with other people. They talked about with their mentor or their MD or other people in the program or in their community groups. And the last is a common view of DEIB. And I say common because it's not that everybody had the same idea. There were variations of this. There was there was a curve, so to speak, of perspectives on DEIB, but there was a sense that DIB was important not only for representation, but also for really understanding who each other are given their lived experiences. And I think that's a great place to start, as you start thinking about like, how would you take these recommendations and move forward? The opportunities for improvement, you can read here, there's four things that stuck out to us. One, there was just a desire for structure and coherence, specifically around DEIB. There were fellows that talked about opportunities or interest in opportunities to connect with others around shared identities. One of the things that was really clear is that Activate provides an opportunity to really prepare them to lead diverse teams in their own companies and the importance of DEIB in their work and the companies that they're building. And I think the last was just kind of this interest in DEIB that's more than representativeness. I think I heard from, fellows in the focus groups that to see an increase of representation from different groups, specifically women or other people of color, was important, but that there was a sense that there's other things to do beyond that. And so what I want to draw your attention to is those two things. I want you to think about, how do those accelerators and opportunities resonate with you in terms of your own experience at Activate? And then we provided a few quotes that are just representative of some of these themes. And so I'm going to leave you here for a couple of minutes and think about a couple of things. One, how do these insights from your fellows resonate with you, or what dissonance does it create for you? And then what are some connections you see between what we learned from fellows and those recommendations that we reviewed at the end, and also the equity framework? So take a few moments, think on those things, and then I'll be back to close us up with one last section. All right. Hopefully you've had a chance to think about those accelerators and opportunities. The last thing I want to draw your attention to is one of the last kind of core components of this report, and those are the recommendations. So this is the first recommendation under the mentoring program, and you can see here that there's a description of the recommendation more built out than what's in the summary. This is about developing an arc of DEI development. You'll see a connection to the equity framework and how we see this situated in that framework and how this could move you from one place to the next. And then there's a rationale of why we would see this recommendation as important for where Activate is. And then there's a description of like what this recommendation could look like given the different structures of the mentoring program that we looked at. There are some resources here as well that reference things that we went to in the research or literature around mentoring programs that you can reference as well. And these are compiled as well in the reference section. So I'm going to leave you here. This is my last little vignette of the report. I think you have a good understanding of what's here. And just to close with reiterating this again, the equity framework is a key part of this. And so knowing what's in the framework, kind of identifying where Activate is and where Activate could go is central to understanding the report. The summary recommendations just kind of centers you in like, what is the big idea? What are the things that we can do to move from one place to the next? And a lot of the detail and insight is here in the recommendations that are drawn directly from either conversations and focus groups or from the materials we reviewed. So we look forward to talking with you more about the report. Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure working with you all, and we'll see you soon.